Footage surfaced online showing Justin Gaethje on a golf course appearing intoxicated and getting into a heated exchange with a fan over UFC fighters. Gaethje seemed relaxed at first, engaging in casual conversation, but the tone quickly shifted when the fan mentioned that his favorite fighter of all time was Conor McGregor. Upon hearing McGregor's name, Gaethje immediately became agitated. He criticized McGregor and questioned why the fan would choose a fighter who isn't American when talking to him. His frustration appeared to escalate as he recalled past disputes and missed opportunities to fight McGregor. Gaethje insisted that he had been prepared to fight McGregor in the past and claimed that McGregor chose not to face him. He said he earned the right to fight him, stating that he finished opponents and climbed the rankings while McGregor avoided him. He expressed that he was tired of constantly hearing McGregor's name associated with him when, in his view, McGregor refused to step into the cage. Although he was visibly irritated, Gaethje also acknowledged McGregor's accomplishments, admitting that what McGregor achieved in the sport was extraordinary and had a major global impact. He stressed that McGregor's championship run helped elevate the entire UFC. Despite the heated tone, Gaethje clarified that he respects what McGregor achieved early in his career. He explained that when McGregor was hungry and financially motivated, he was one of the best fighters in the world. He credited McGregor for helping build the sport and bringing attention to all fighters, including himself. However, Gaethje maintained that success changed McGregor and that once McGregor became wealthy, he was no longer the same fighter. He repeated that McGregor used to be great but hasn't been the same competitor in years. The fan tried to respond and lighten the mood, but Gaethje continued to fixate on the idea that he had been denied the opportunity to prove himself against McGregor. He reiterated that he would have beaten McGregor if the fight had happened. Even while venting his anger, he circled back once more to acknowledge McGregor's legacy, emphasizing that his accomplishments were massive and deserve recognition. The interaction ended with Gaethje still visibly emotional, reflecting the long-standing tension between him and McGregor, even though they have never met inside the cage. The footage has since circulated widely and sparked debate among fans about whether Gaethje's reaction was simply raw honesty, the result of alcohol, or unresolved competitive frustration. Belal Muhammad is entering UFC Qatar Week with full confidence and a clear message for the welterweight division. He plans on knocking out Ian Gary and believes that Saturday night will showcase a version of himself that fans have never seen before. Muhammad hinted at what he called his Mr. Canelo hands, suggesting that he intends to put on a striking display rather than relying solely on his wrestling background. As the co-main event draws closer, both fighters are under the spotlight, and Belal is determined to prove that he is a legitimate threat to everyone at 170 pounds. This fight has been brewing for months, beginning with Muhammad revealing earlier in October that Ian Gary did not want the bout to be contested over 5 rounds. As a result, the matchup was set for 3 rounds, and Muhammad took that decision personally, believing it showed a lack of confidence from Gary. Now that fight week has arrived, Muhammad has been actively participating in interviews and media appearances, using every opportunity to make his intentions known. In a recent conversation with Mike Bone from MMA Junkie, Muhammad laid out his strategy for the upcoming fight in remarkable detail. He explained that he expects Gary to try to avoid exchanges in the first round by circling the cage and relying on point-oriented jabs. Muhammad believes that approach will fail once he applies pressure. He expressed his plan to grab hold of Gary, secure a takedown, allow him to stand back up, and then dominate him in the striking department. The reasoning behind this is simple. Muhammad wants to demonstrate that he can take Gary down at will but does not need to rely on wrestling to secure the finish. Muhammad pointed out that Gary has faced high-level strikers such as MVP, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and Carlos Prates without being finished by any of them. For Muhammad, scoring a knockout would not only solidify the win but send a message to the entire welterweight division that he should not be overlooked. He believes that stopping Gary on the feet will force fans and critics to recognize that he is one of the most complete fighters in the weight class. As anticipation builds, the question becomes whether Muhammad can execute this bold plan or whether Gary will continue his rise. Belal is motivated to make a statement and remind everyone exactly who he is. With both fighters entering the cage hungry for a breakthrough moment, this co-main event has become one of the most talked about matchups of the UFC Qatar card. Arman Tsarukyan has issued a strong warning to both Dan Hooker and Iliad Topuria ahead of his upcoming fight at UFC Qatar. With Fight Week in full swing, Tsarukyan has been actively participating in interviews, generating momentum and attention around the event. In a recent conversation with Shaq MMA, he made it clear that while mixed martial arts is a business, there are limits to the kind of trash talk he is willing to tolerate. He stressed that he has no problem with light criticism or competitive verbal exchanges, but crossing the line into personal territory is something he will not accept. Tsarukyan stated that Dan Hooker has never spoken about him in a personal or disrespectful manner, and he said that if he ever felt Hooker crossed that boundary, he would confront him directly and settle the issue face to face. The same standard, he explained, applies to Iliad Topuria. Tsarukyan emphasized that fighting is business and part of the entertainment world, and trash talk is normal within the sport. However, he drew a firm line at involving family or engaging in offensive insults. In his words, if anyone brings up his family or uses expressions intended to degrade, he would not hesitate to handle it directly. Tsarukyan acknowledged that Topuria has previously made comments referring to him as spoiled, and although he did not appreciate those remarks, he considered them within the boundaries of competitive talk. The real issue for him would be if those comments escalated into more personal attacks. He reiterated that fighters can say what they want within reason, but respect must be maintained because once a line is crossed, it stops being business. He said that if anyone touches that line with bad intentions, he will address it immediately. As anticipation grows for his performance this weekend, Tsarukyan appears focused, composed, and prepared to make a strong statement inside the cage. During the UFC Qatar media event, he and his opponent participated in a face-off, adding intensity to the build-up. Tsarukyan maintained his calm demeanor throughout the stare-down, signaling confidence heading into the fight. With the lightweight division heating up and rising names fighting for attention, Tsarukyan is determined not only to win but to remind the division of his presence and potential. His warning to Hooker and Topuria reinforces that he is fully aware of the mental games surrounding high-stakes matchups, but he is unwilling to allow disrespect to become part of the narrative. For Tsarukyan, this fight is business, but his boundaries are clear and non-negotiable. Ian Gary has spoken out regarding the latest UFC welterweight rankings update, expressing satisfaction with the direction the division is heading. Although Carlos Prates is currently positioned ahead of him, Gary emphasized that the rankings finally reflect the true competitive landscape. He stated that, for the first time in a long while, the welterweight rankings make sense and represent the emerging era of new fighters who are ready to shape the future of the division. Gary noted that the removal of former long-standing names such as Leon Edwards and Colby Covington marks a turning point in the weight class. In his view, the departure of the previous generation signifies a clean slate, one that highlights younger and hungrier athletes who are prepared to redefine the championship picture. He believes this transition is not only overdue but necessary for the evolution of the sport and the division. With confidence and conviction, Gary made it clear that the entire welterweight division is waiting on his upcoming bout to determine the next major step in the rankings. He stated that once he secures victory this weekend, there will be no hesitation about where he belongs in the standings. According to him, his win will lead him directly to the #1 ranking and establish him as the undeniable contender for the title. Gary went on to explain that he views his next fight as more than just another matchup. To him, this is the moment that decides the state of the entire welterweight division. He believes that when he stops Bilal this weekend, his path will be cemented, and the UFC will have no choice but to elevate him to the #1 contender spot. Gary expressed complete certainty in his preparation, his talent, and his timing, insisting that the upcoming fight will prove that the new generation is firmly in control. He concluded by reinforcing that the welterweight division's future begins now, and that his performance will set the tone for the next era. Gary made it clear that he is ready to carry the division forward and that every fighter in the rankings is waiting to see what happens when he steps into the cage this weekend. The MMA community has been actively discussing the surprising removal of Kai Kara-France from the UFC flyweight rankings following the latest rankings update. Fans immediately noticed his absence and speculation began spreading online, with many assuming it might have been a release or an undisclosed injury. To clear the confusion, Ariel Helwani provided clarification after reaching out directly to Kara-France's team. According to Helwani, The decision was not made by the UFC due to performance or contract issues. Instead, Kai Kara-France himself informed the UFC that he would be taking a year off from competition to focus on personal priorities outside of fighting. Kara-France is not retiring but is stepping away from active competition for at least a year. His team made it clear that he intends to dedicate this time to cultural and spiritual activities that are important to him. Over the years, Kara-France has been vocal about representing his heritage and taking pride in his cultural background. His break is motivated in part by a desire to reconnect with those roots and pursue interests that are meaningful beyond the octagon. While he remains passionate about the sport, he feels it is necessary to give attention to other aspects of his life that he has not been able to fully invest in during his active fighting schedule. Because he notified the UFC of his decision and removed himself from the testing pool, he became automatically ineligible to remain in the rankings. The rankings only reflect fighters who are actively competing and who are available to fight. Removing himself from the testing pool signals a temporary exit from active competition, and UFC protocol requires that fighters be taken out of the rankings until they officially return. Helwani emphasized that this does not mean Kara-France has been released by the promotion. He is still under contract but is not being ranked until he notifies the UFC of his return and re-enters the testing pool. This is the first time in years that Kai Kara-France has been absent from the UFC flyweight rankings, marking a significant moment in the division's landscape. His absence will create opportunities for emerging contenders and reshape the path toward title contention. For now, Kara-France is on personal leave, and the UFC will welcome him back to the rankings once he confirms his return and resumes full eligibility. Fans will have to wait and see when the former title challenger decides to step back into the division and restart his pursuit of championship gold.